we find that some metaphors which may be transparent for native speakers of the language are not for non-natives. So if you are not used to having some kind of, a kind of conventional metaphor which extends the meaning of a very high frequency word in English, for example, this may be difficult for a non-native to understand. So for example, just to give one example, we have a verb like strike in English, which in Spanish, in its basic meaning, is golpear. So if you say, I struck my knee against the table, this is exactly the same as golpeé la mesa con la rodilla. But in English, we can also use the verb strike metaphorically when we are referring to, for example, when we suddenly get an idea. So it struck me that. This was very difficult. Now, because this doesn't exist in Spanish, you can't say me golpeó que, all right, or even me golpeó la idea. These kind of metaphors tend to be difficult for non-native speakers to understand, and very often I think that learners don't like to ask too many questions or to bother their interlocutors about these kinds of uses of language. So they may act as if they've understood, but they haven't understood, although they may understand, for example, that basic meaning of the word, like golpear. But they wouldn't understand the metaphorical use. And then, of course, in terms of production of metaphors, I think once a learner is familiar with a metaphorical use of language, it's not a problem to produce it unless it's a phraseological metaphor. And phraseological metaphors are very easy to get wrong. That is, we tend to get the details wrong about idioms. So for example, in English it's to kill two birds with one stone, all right? Whereas in Spanish, I'm just trying to think, what is it? No, it is matar dos pájaros de un tiro, all right? So it's quite difficult for a Spanish speaker to remember that it's not de un tiro, it's a stone. So those are the kind of details that sometimes in production non-native speakers can get wrong. Metaphors are usually evaluative. They evaluate a situation. They're very rarely neutral. And so, for example, I was recounted an anecdote by a colleague the other day about when he had been on a research visit to a British university and had been taking part in a seminar discussion. And the researcher leading the seminar was answering a lot of questions from the different people in the group. And he was able to answer all the questions satisfactorily. Now, this colleague of mine, who was a Spanish speaker, said to him, "Oh, you've got all the answers up your sleeve," which means you can produce them very easily. And this colleague of mine did not understand why the leader of the seminar became very angry with him. Because he didn't understand that when he used this metaphor, he was not saying anything good. He was saying that, basically, that this production of the answers so fluently is a bad thing. And so he offended the other speaker. And I think this is one of the greatest problems that the non-native speaker has when producing a metaphor in another language, because we don't really understand when we use it. That is, whether we're using it to say something nice or something not so nice about somebody.